Hi, how are you? I'm Joel Myers. I'm a lead iOS engineer and architect with many years of experience. I would say I've been in the ranks of contracting and consulting for iOS development natively for about 13 years now, since around 2010-11. That's where I began the road of transitioning from my computer science time at Georgia State University, where I took on the role of initially as a Java enterprise environment specialist, but that wasn't for me. So I shifted through the demand of the iPhone device and became a native iOS developer. So my role has been to join teams that are already in motion, take over for certain developers who may be transitioning to other roles. That's how I started and won my first contract. I was in a more debugging, test kit type of role. I did a little bit of development in that role with Sage. They got me started. And that was back when it was only Objective C and there was no ARC, automatic reference counting. There was only manual retain release. So the code was a lot different back then, a lot different work environments. It's great to have seen the transition of how we work now in development. Being the advent of Google's working type spaces, a lot of the spaces post the initial contracts have been a lot more fun to work in. So I got that start as a contractor, and I continue being a contractor. I continue winning projects, winning interviews. Being a developer who can communicate was something that brought a lot of value to myself and to the teams in which I joined. So, like I said, as a contractor, I'm basically a mercenary. I train specifically to be solid in native iOS, and that is the roles that most of my contracting obligations were on. From Sage, I went to Armitage, where I worked there continuously on their code, the user experiences, the onboarding, view controllers. A lot of my work initially was user experience based. So I was working on the view controllers, creating that experience that navigated the services and the data to the user. And remember, this is a 2010, 11, 12 iOS, so pretty archaic in these days, but we don't get here if it's not for those times. So I'm thankful to have been a part of that transition. Onwards to my big client of UPS. That was a great role where I worked on the flagship app. And I basically focused on a lot of the core location and mapping functionalities for GPS tracking of users' parcels to them, which was a I would say it was a monumental type of user experience back in the day where now you can see your package en route. That was great. And that went onwards to me working my first role with a civic organization at the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation. Now, that was a role in which I worked on an iPad app. And this iPad app allowed for non-driver's license, I should say non-commercial driver's license testing during the driving portion of the driver's license test, which was done by a proxy using the iPad app that we created. This is for non-commercial, and once the non-commercial went successfully, we also did it for the commercial, which had 3 times more extensive driving tests and exams and infractions. I was a part of this PennDOT organization as a developer for about 18 months, and it really solidified me believing in myself to actually go away from my home to actually develop. So that was very important for me. And from there, I took on different contracts, and I took on either I would join as someone taking over, or I would start from concept to finish. As I continued through my contractor experiences, I would see that even though I would join on certain projects, as I continued on, I would work more with startups, working with priority payment systems, working on point of sale iPad application for merchants. Onwards to after that, I took a time to actually be a native iOS development instructor. In this role, I was leading a 6-week boot camp, basically helping a consulting company transition different discipline developers from whatever they're savvy in into the high demand world of native iOS development. That was a strong role that really reinforced everything that I had been developing, but allowed me to actually get deeper in the knowing. They say if you really want to learn something, teach others, and that really helped me with my proficiency, my ability to speak the language of native iOS development. And from there, I started working with startups. I was on a couple small development teams where we worked for larger companies, creating apps for both in-house development, exposing certain new features and proof of concepts for like IBM. And we also built large scale apps with large budgets around 400K for companies like Prime Sport, which is now On Location, which provides luxury ticketing services. So we built a lot of custom user experience controls, like sliders that had the minimum price and the maximum price. I created a custom UI control for that. So we were doing things that never been done, and that's really my forte, working on ideals of complexity, but actually creating simplicity and actually delivering that in the implementation. Beyond that world at Make and Build, where we did those particular apps, I actually also took on a contractor role setting up the Honeywell development team here in Atlanta. I was the initial principal developer, actually bringing on and setting to task and cadence our agile scrum process in-house as Honeywell transitioned their development team here in the Atlanta area. And from there, I just began working startups. So I worked with two startups at the Atlanta Tech Village. One where I came on as the initial developer there, and I actually took ownership of their current App Store release, which was revenue generating, and I came on to enhance, support, upgrade, provide new features for, architect new solutions for this particular app. And I also worked with the startup in which I created and architected a mobile iOS native SDK, which is a software development kit. And with that SDK, they were able to offer that to other apps as a monetization strategy for those other apps that they would license through that company. So they would be able to drop that SDK into their app, use a licensing key from our company, and then they would be able to monetize and offer their users in-app surveys in exchange for their in-app currency. That was a monetization strategy and offering. We also decided to actually create that app or that SDK so that it ported into other frameworks and those other technological stacks like React Native. We ported it over to Unity. We ported it over to Cordova. So I led that team. It was a remote team of developers from all over who specialized in taking in a native SDK and porting those actual functionalities over into, like I mentioned, React Native, Unity, and Cordova. So beyond the startup realm, I began freelancing development with my own development company, in which my most recent role, I've successfully got a particular equity crowdfunding platform for direct investing. I was the program manager and architect, actually, where I took and did the discovery of the idea, created functional requirements, which led to design, onwards until I helped to find and recruit and interview, along with the team, the development team that we built for this. We brought in 3 native iOS engineers, 2 back-end full-stack developers, 1 QA engineer, 1 DevOps engineer, and 1 solutions architect. So I was able to basically be like the implementation lead, set the culture of Agile Scrum cadence with our Jira board and our point and stories, estimations, sprint retrospectives, sprint breakdowns, things like that. So that was a process from 2022 to 2024, to which we're now submitted for FINRA approval, to which that equity crowdfunding platform will be live and available for non-accredited investors. I've also taken in and worked with non-technical founders for getting their proof of concept or MVP off the ground. So I've become a 0 to 1 type of guy, an engineer, and I like to bring that in all my breadth of experiences in everything that I do. I'm very passionate about emerging technology. I love blockchain and Web3, as well as smart contract implementation, and I love to think about how AI can be involved in optimizing all of this. So very interested in getting to know you, getting to know what your concept is, and how I can be of service to add value to you and your organization. So peace. I am Joel Myers, lead iOS engineer.